Hi, I'm Emily,
Hi, I'm Minha
and we're both students in the Columbia SOSciencesPo dual BA program.
on the Le Havre campus.
Yes, and today we want to help you guys nail your interviews because we know they are coming soon. So we asked a few people on campus for advice for the interview, and we asked them how their interview went, and we also want to share you our experience.
Okay.
Hi, Nicky.
Hi!
So, how did you prepare for your SOSciencesPo Columbia interview?
So basically, because I knew some students from the dual BA before, and then like some students in SOSciencesPo, the normal program as well. So I asked them about like how the interview went for them for their year, and then I list down some questions and try to answer it on my own. And after that, I just try to repeat the questions, the answers by myself. I never did any other mock interviews before. I have never been interviewed by other universities before because this is the only program I applied to, and well, fortunately I got in. So yeah, I asked like former students and just try to practice like on my own by myself.
Okay. And how did the interview go? Was it good? How were the interviewers? What questions were you asked?
Oh my god. Okay, traumatizing experience, but it was still a good experience. So for me, I personally felt that there was so much pressure. Of course, like it's SOSciencesPo Columbia, right? But at the end of the day, I feel like the judges just want to know like how well you can handle under stress, or how well you can articulate yourself when you're under pressure. And for the questions I have received, I have a list.
Ooh.
Fortunately, for example, they asked me why this program, why the dual BA, why the campus of Le Havre, and of course that it's not because I'm Asian that I want to go there. So there was also about how politics in China changed over time. So that was very specific. And then like at some point as I was answering the question, they asked me to compare China's politics with Russians. So I was kind of gagged by that. I did not know what to answer, but then it went well, I guess, because like I was accepted, but I didn't know. So if you find yourself in like this situation and like you don't know what to do, just try to like answer as confidently as possible, and don't be scared of the judges because they know you're just a student. Yeah, so that's basically what they told me, because like I looked scared, so they reassured me in the interview. So don't be scared, like they're all humans. And then because I did MUN before, so they asked me as an MUNer, how have you had any difficulties or challenges during any MUN sessions? So I talked about how I was in a committee that I was not familiar with, but then at some point somehow I got best position paper award. So it kind of showed that even though I did not know the topic well, I could still articulate myself and like do enough research to be able to show the committee that I do understand the stance of the country, and got an award. And I think that's a very basic fundamental part of being a SOSciencesPo student. It's to talk about something that you don't know in an articulated way. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Nikki. Oh, would you have like a last advice for the students who are about to have their interview in a few days?
Try to, because like I didn't do a mock exam myself and I kind of regretted it, even though I got in, but I would still advise you to find someone who like you trust, who you know, or like former students to do a mock interview with you, and just be confident. Don't be scared, and don't look scared in front of the judges. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Tyler, and I'm an American high school student who's currently here with the SOSciencesPo Columbia dual degree. As for the interview, I originally prepared for it by doing a Google search, as I'm sure many of you did, and like many of you, I found a few threads on Reddit and elsewhere which described it as being a bit different than the American interview system. So
And how was it different?
Yeah, the American system tends to focus more on your personality. It's like, oh, what do you do on campus? What's your campus life like, and things like that. And you will get some of that in your Columbia dual interview, mainly from the GS interviewer, as opposed to the SOSciencesPo interviewer, who answers questions more in the European style, where it seems to be more assessing your judgment as well as your knowledgeability. So yeah, my interviewer was on Zoom. I don't believe my SOSciencesPo interviewer was from the specific campus. So yeah, first few minutes was with the Columbia interviewer who questioned more of the American style. What's my background like? What are some of the activities I do? What sort of leader I am on campus, things of that sort. And as for the SOSciencesPo interviewer, my one like gotcha question that I think most people have probably talked about already. Mine was for some reason on like artificial intelligence.
Oh.
This was like at the time still developing. Now everyone uses like ChatGPT and DeepSeek, but my question was on what I thought the role of it should be within classrooms. So yeah, don't worry too much, don't think too hard about it. You should be able to answer anything you say confidently, because that'll prepare you for all of your interviews outside of just colleges as well, and also for your presentations in the case you do get in, because basically no matter what your topic is, you're gonna have to talk about it and present it in a effective manner with as much confidence as you can muster.
And is there anything you would like to tell like yourself in the past, like the Tyler who was about to get interviewed? Anything that threw you off? Or
That's a good question. I'd say things that I would have liked to know going in. I originally thought, my understanding of the interview process was I'd be in a Zoom room and I'd first join with the Columbia host and then join a separate Zoom room or get moved to like a breakout room with the SOSciencesPo interviewer. No, they're both in the interview at the same time. At least they were in my case, and they both watch you. If you're someone who doesn't have much experience talking with people with French accents, that's something I'd also mentally prepare myself for, because it's not the easiest. But since coming here, I've been told even I have an accent. So if you plan on moving forward with this program, you have to get used to it.
okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Zoren. I'm from Singapore and I'm in the SOSciencesPo Columbia Dual BA.
So Zoren, the question is, how did you prepare for your SOSciencesPo Columbia interview?
Honestly, I think I just reread my application essay many times to make sure that if they asked me to elaborate on this specific line, I could. So I think I talked a bit on my, career aspirations. I talked a bit about what courses, what extracurriculars that I'm interested both in SOSciencesPo as well as in Columbia. So like I knew how to justify those and like what specific courses or maybe even professors that I'm looking forward to. And perhaps like since I was applying to the LAV campus, I need to like justify why is it that I'm interested in the Asia Pacific. So I don't think I prepared that much. It's just like to make sure like that I'm very clear. If you have already written the application essay, technically you should already know why you want to apply to this school, and I think that's the most important thing.
And have you done any college interviews before, or?
I think honestly it was a while ago, so I forgot what was the exact timeline. I did do like one in-person interview for Yale, which didn't go that well. But what interviews did I do? Yeah, that was honestly one of the only interviews that I did.
And so like compared to the previous interviews, how would you say this one went?
I think this one went alright. Like honestly, I left the interview relatively indifferent. It's like, oh, okay, I tried my best. I think they did ask one question, which is, since you are going to study in France, like, do you have any thoughts or opinions on, the current affairs of the European Union? To which I had nothing to say. Like, as in, I was interested in the Asia Pacific, and that's what I said. But like, I did mention something about maybe Brexit, but that was like quite basic. So honestly, I think I didn't do that well for that. So maybe my advice is to learn a bit more about the region where you're going to. And I was able to say some current affairs of France, but not of Europe as a whole. Yeah.
And do you remember any other interview questions they asked? Or the overall vibe in general?
Honestly, I think it was a relatively standard interview. Like, as in, it's not like I think most college interviews would more or less be the same. It's just that for this interview, it encompasses 2 different universities. So they will ask questions on both sides. So there's definitely going to be one representative from each, from both SOSciencesPo as well as from Columbia, to ask you questions to see how interested you are in both of them at the same time. So definitely don't give the impression that, oh, actually you're only in this for SOSciencesPo, you're only in this for Columbia, where the other university is not as important. So you should have substantial interests in both. And yeah, I think if you really are interested, you would have researched a lot about these two universities, and I think naturally that will show.
Are there any like questions that you remember or that kind of shocked you, or
just the EU question? Everything else was like prepared. So like ask you to introduce yourself, or like why do you want to study in this thing? Like why is it that you want a dual BA instead of just a normal bachelor's like most other universities offer? So I think it's quite standard. I think it's there are no trick questions in a way. Yeah.
And do you have any like final tips for people who want to apply?
Honestly, all the best. I think it's, compared to other application procedures, this is relatively straightforward. You just have to submit, like other than the administrative details, you just have to submit one essay, go for one interview, and that's it. So, and I don't think it's that complicated. So if you have read up enough about these two universities, what the program offers, and maybe some specific courses and professors, I think you're all set, and just go into it and your interests will show. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Zoren.
First, how did we prepare for the interview? Go ahead.
So for how I prepared my interview was that I tried to search some potential questions they could ask. So there's not a lot of resources regarding the SOSciencesPo Columbia dual degree, but there's like a Reddit page where people like posted some potential interview questions, and there's also our very infamous, famous Anna de Valeria, who
used to make
videos about SOSciencesPo Columbia as well. And I actually personally DM'd her to ask her like some potential questions, and so that's how I prepared for it.
Had you done any other college interviews before?
The only interview I had done prior to this one was my Cambridge interview, but the big difference was that my Cambridge interview was a lot more academic, whereas this one was a lot more, I think, laid back. So. Yeah. But I think definitely the fact that I had done a college interview before kind of made it a little less stressful.
Well, for me, so it was also not my first interview. I had done a few interviews for US universities, but it was like the interviews that are conducted by alumni, so very different from the SOSciencesPo Columbia one, and also very different from the Cambridge one. It was more chill and less academic. It was more about getting to know you for the ones I did before. So this one, well, I found the SOSciencesPo Columbia one to be more rigorous compared to the alumni interviews of I think I had done Princeton and Stanford at that time. And yeah, and just like you, I also searched on the internet for like the questions that are listed in some Reddit page and a Quora page, I think also.
Yeah, I think I saw that too.
Yeah, and I listed them on a Google Doc, and I tried to brainstorm a bit on my own to find answers. I also had the help of a student who's now on the Paris campus, but who had done the interview for Columbia. She was my SOSciencesPo Zoom. Use that resource; it's very useful. I don't know if you were in contact with
I didn't do any SOSciencesPo, but I know a lot of people did it. Everyone tells me it's very useful. So there's a lot of resources out there for you guys, and really take advantage of these resources, I would say.
And I think when you're not a French student, maybe you're less inclined to know about the SOSciencesPo system. So basically it's a system where the current student at SOSciencesPo, they voluntarily help you. You're paired up with like a binôme, and they help you during the whole process. So I was paired up quite late, so she only helped me with my interview part, but that was super helpful because I got to do one mock with her, and it really put me into like the mindset and everything to be prepared and not surprised by the interview questions.
And there are SOSciencesPos for the dual degrees as well.
Yeah,
and that's what Emilie is doing right now.
Yeah, and even like all the dual degrees, I think they're also like a SOSciencesPo system. So don't hesitate to check this out. So regarding the news, because well, at SOSciencesPo there is like a big focus on being aware of like the current affairs. So I don't know how you prepared for that part. I was kind of stressed because I didn't know to what extent I needed to know about the state of the world, and ultimately I think I was only focusing on like the Asia part because I was applying to the campus. And I remember it was like the first days of my vacation, my winter break, and I spent like 5 days just locked in my room reading a lot of news about what was happening in China, in Taiwan, in North Korea, and I was listing them up and I was taking notes on Notion, if you know that. And yeah, at the end it was not that useful for my interview, but still it's some good knowledge to have, so I don't regret it.
From what I know, the interview format kind of changed.
Oh really?
I contacted a prior alumni who passed the interview like 5 years ago, and he had to rigorously really prepare a piece of news article that he had to like present to the jury and why he thought that this was important and things and so on. So he was like, I don't know if you have that for you, like if you have that, but you should look up the news. So what I did was I also just like I didn't prepare the news that rigorously. I was just like how I usually do in the morning, see what goes on in the world, and especially the Asia Pacific region as well. In the end, like you said, they didn't ask me anything about like the current events.
But I feel like each interview is very different, and they might ask some very specific question about some topics
Like
related to the
it's
news.
very tailored to your personal writing, like your writing essay. Because for example, I didn't have anything about the current affairs, but what I did, I mentioned, for example, like human rights in Asia, like in Myanmar, and they did ask me things about like the current affairs going on in Myanmar because I specifically mentioned that in my essay. So I would say really just like know your essay by heart, and if you mention something, then you should know that really well.
It's kind of funny because I think from what I remember, I didn't feel like the person who was interviewing me had read my essay.
Oh really?
Yeah, I was a bit confused because I couldn't tell if they had read it or not, because it was quite repetitive from what I had written. My interview, like they asked me my motivations, of course, but in the end, yeah, it was related to my essay, but because I was answering that question and I was answering the same thing that I wrote in my essay, so that's why it was tailored around my essay. But I don't think they have read it, but I'm not sure.
Just to say, every interview is different because I could tell they definitely had read my essay.
Okay.
Because they were asking me specific questions regarding my essay. So.
Okay, so tackling the big question of the interview, how did it go for you?
So I had a jury. I think we all had a jury from SOSciencesPo and from Colombia. For me, it was mostly the jury from Colombia who was kind of leading the questions. And it's really funny because I had read on like Reddit and things like that like the Colombia interviewers are way more like chill.
Yeah, me too.
They're like very like American in the sense where they're like, hi, how are you? How are you feeling?
Yeah.
And I was surprised to see that it actually was the case because for me, I had like my interviewer for Colombia was like very sweet. She was very kind, whereas I could tell like my French interviewer was kind of just there to interview me. So he was actually more in charge of like the academic questions and so on. So I think there kind of was a little difference. And as of the questions they asked me like, for example, why, like one of the previous questions of why do you want to come to Colombia, I mentioned like it's in New York City, there's like the board of the UN and everything, it's like a vibrant city and everything, and they were like, yeah, so why then Colombia, not for example like NYU? So there was this question. There was also a question of like what is like something that I would like to add to the core at Colombia. And I know like it's a question that gets asked pretty often because I know some people who are asked this question too. So I would say look up the syllabus for both Colombia and both SOSciencesPo because they can definitely ask questions about that. And they also ask my general motivations, like what I want to get out of this dual degree, and also more like questions tailored around my essay, so current affairs around my essay and so on.
Okay. Well, for me it was the opposite because I was expecting the Colombia guy to be more chill than the SOSciencesPo guy, but it was quite the opposite because I don't know, he seemed to be, I mean, he wasn't mean or anything, but he wasn't as friendly as I expected him to be. but in the end it was alright. I mean, I could tell that he really wanted to test me, whereas for the SOSciencesPo question I thought they were more basic and less like tailored to me and my personal production. I also got asked questions about my general motivation at the beginning, why the dual BA, why the Le Havre campus.
Yeah, that one too.
Then we moved on my plan for the civic engagement program at SOSciencesPo. And I mentioned how I was involved in like helping the homeless during high school, so I said I wanted to do something related to that. And then I had some follow-up questions about that, and I was asked to compare how the situations of the homeless was different in France, Japan and the United States, because I'm half French and half Japanese, and since Colombia is in the US, I think they wanted me to really have like this comparative view that I could bring to the table. And I think that's a question that gets asked quite often, to compare a specific topic between the countries and the environment you're familiar with. I talked with someone who had a similar question but like on another topic and with different countries as well. So if you have like an international background, I think that would be an interesting thing to prepare. Aside from that, I was asked also a question on the core curriculum, but for me it was on the science part, because on the core curriculum, in the core curriculum of Colombia, you have requirements in science, and I was asked why I thought it was a good thing to study science, even for us who study who focus on social sciences. And I think the question that troubled me the most was a very basic question. It was like, what's the movie you have seen or a book you have read in the past year that you really didn't like?
Oh, I think they asked you the same question
Really?
too. Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that at all, because I was just so focused on like current affairs, and I was surprised that they asked me that. So
Yeah, now that I think about it, I think they also asked me like something related to books.
yeah,
I think for me, they asked me like what my recent favorite book was. Like for me, the questions that troubled me the most was like, what would you add in the core curriculum?
yeah.
Because I said philosophy, and then they asked me a specific philosopher,
Oh wow.
and so I was like, oh damn. And so I was trying to think, because it was like the beginning of the year too, so I hadn't studied philosophy that much, and so I was like, oh, so that kind of troubled me. And I think for the book as well, it's always like these kind of questions that kind of come out of the blue that are a little even less academic, I would say, that troubles
Yeah.
me.
I know I responded Barbie for the movie that I didn't like. Yeah, and I went on about how it was supposed to be like this big feminist project of deconstructing the masculine gaze and everything, and in the end it was just like feminism 101, very basic, saying that, oh, women can dress however they want, and maybe it was not like the most relevant for 2024 or 2023. I don't know when it was released. 2024. Bref. And yeah, that was basically it. I think the interview was quite short because it's only a 30-minute slot, and they give you 5 to 10 minutes in the end to ask questions, so you really only have 20 minutes to like sell and present yourself. So try to make the most out of it.
Did you ask any questions in the end?
I did, and I would say it's quite important to prepare questions in the end to show that you are interested in the program. But I mean, it's quite difficult to find questions, because if you really are interested in the program, you have done all of your research.
That's true.
And there is not like a lot of questions you can ask without them being like super obvious. But try to find like 2 or 3 that are a bit more specific, maybe on the civic engagement program at SOSciencesPo, or on internships, opportunities, or stuff like that. It's always useful. And
I think one of the most important things, not regarding just only the interview, but just this dual degree in general, is that you're really in a dual degree, in the sense where you're not just at SOSciencesPo and you're not just at Columbia, you're really here for the 4 years experience. And I think people forget that a lot, because some people come here just because they wanted to come to SOSciencesPo, and I know a lot of people do the dual degree because they want to go to Columbia. But in the end, I think it's like the 4 years that really kind of distinguishes you from like the rest.
Yeah.
And I think that's like what's really most important. And I think that's what I emphasize the most on, and not only in my essays but in my interviews. Because for example, in the end, when they asked me questions, and they were like, "Do you have any questions?" I asked one question for SOSciencesPo and one question for Columbia.
Yeah.
And I think as they're recruiting for people who are ready to spend 4 years in 2 different countries, it's really important to show that you're engaged in both.
Yeah.
And throughout your dual degree as well, you should be engaged in both, I think.
And have your motivation for the program ready. And in your motivation, don't forget any of the school. Don't be emphasizing more on one than the other, because it's really this combination, as you mentioned, that makes this program very unique and special. And I mean, for now we have only experienced the SOSciencesPo part, but I think we're gonna have an interesting
2 years at Columbia.
2 years at Columbia as well, and overall it will be a very great experience in our lives.
Yep.
So, do you have a final word, final advice for the interviews?
Final advice would really be to not stress, because I remember I stressed a lot for my prior Cambridge interview, but then again that was like so academic.
Yeah.
I still get haunted by that one. But honestly, it's not as bad as you think. And I think when you're more laid back, you have more confidence in yourself, and I think that really shows, even if it's online, in the way you speak and the way you express yourself, it really shows. I think that's important. And in the end, it's really cliche, but if you want it that badly, I think it also really shows. If you really want the program, if you really researched it up, if you're passionate, you obviously have questions about it. Know your essays, and honestly, if it's that case, I think it should go fine. It should go well.
Yeah.
How about you, Emily?
I don't know if I can add anything to that. What would be an advice I would have loved to hear before going to the interview? Is like, okay, so once you're done, maybe you will overthink, and maybe you would think that you could have come up with better answers. I know I was very disappointed in myself once the 25 minutes were over, because it's very short again, and I don't think you realize it until it's done. And yeah, even if you think that you could have come up with better answers, you can always come up with better answers at the end when you have more time to think about it. But it's really, the interview is really about responding to the questions you are asked on the spot. Yeah, on the spot. You're asked on the spot, and how you react to that. So just talk and don't be afraid to say things. And
remember, everyone's in the same position as you. Everyone
True.
is being asked questions on the spot, so everyone is stressed. So
and in the end, even if you're disappointed, sometimes you get good results. I made it here. At the end of my interview 1 year ago, I would probably not think that I was in. So at the end, it turns out okay. And if you are already accepted to the interview, it's a huge step and a very good step for you, and you're almost there. So yeah, good luck.
good luck, guys. It's the last straight line towards the goal, so
Yeah, and we
guys
wish you the
do.
best. Bye.
bye.